trade today, it has been mostly quiet on the trade front so far. But Isaiah Ford looks like he's headed to New England. He's been told that he's going to be traded to the Patriots. Again, there's been no confirmation from either team so far, but the player has been informed that he's being moved.
Most importantly, Adam, the first trade. We still have some time here left before 4 p.m. Eastern time, but like everything in 2020, the NFL trade deadline is being impacted by COVID-19. And how so?
Well, it's a situation where if you trade for a player right now, Field, you have to wait 5 days for that player to pass through COVID protocols. So the Green Bay Packers, for instance, who are playing Thursday night, who have lost A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams to the reserve COVID-19 list, or being close contacts to somebody in touch with COVID. Right now, even if they wanted to trade for a running back today, they could not play him on Thursday night because it'd have to be 5 days of protocols.
It certainly is one of the more unique stories this NFL season, Schefter. We'll be back with you in just a moment, but you mentioned that Isaiah Ford is on his way to New England. And Diana, you brought us some news early this morning in regards to a Patriots player that could be on the move.
Yeah, quarterback Stephon Gilmore has gotten the most attention for New England in terms of teams interested in him. They've taken calls from other teams, but I've been told that the price tag is very high for the defending AP Defensive Player of the Year. The New England Patriots looking for a first-round draft pick and a player to deal Stephon Gilmore, and I'm told as of now there is no deal in place, Field.
All right, well, Stephon Gilmore looks perhaps bound to stay in New England. But let's get caught up on some of the players that have been on the move. The Ravens traded for defensive end Yannick Ngakoue over a week ago, adding to one of the best defenses in football. Important to note, he is a free agent after this year. Seattle ranks 24th in sacks, but will receive some help trading for former Bengals defensive end Carlos Dunlap. He's got 82.5 sacks, 9th most among active players. Then Desmond King was named a first-team All-Pro in 2018. And now he's getting an address change as he's gone from Los Angeles Chargers over to the Tennessee Titans, sending Tennessee their former All-Pro player, getting a 6th-round pick in return. And Quan Alexander had a brief 49ers career as just yesterday, San Francisco sent the linebacker to New Orleans in exchange for Kiko Alonso and a 5th-round pick. It's only the 4th time that Kiko Alonso has been traded in his NFL career. So the 49ers move Quan Alexander to the Saints. So they were selling, but coming off of the news yesterday of long-term injuries to Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle, I think some are wondering, Lewis, should the 49ers be in the market to add some new pieces to try to make it through the rest of the season?
Yeah, this is an interesting situation, Field. I think the 49ers have to be bargain shoppers, if anything at all. I think you're never going to throw in the towel specifically on a season, but I think because of how this team has been ravaged so much, I think they have an eye on the short term and the long term, meaning this: if it's not something that's favorable to us, that would help us out long term and would contribute to us building towards 2021, then it really doesn't make sense to go full bore into this trading period and trying to make a splash. And again, you're not throwing in the towel on this season, but the writing's kind of a little bit on the wall. And sometimes Lady Luck bounces that way and it's not in your favor. So I think John Lynch is going to take the long-term approach here. I don't see them making a big splash. It's hard, for San Francisco fans to wrap their heads around that, considering the fact they're just coming off a Super Bowl where they were very close to winning it. But I think the long-term approach is what will be best for them going forward.
I agree with Lewis. From a standpoint, if they're buying or selling, if I'm the 49ers, I'm selling. As Lewis alluded to, they have been ravaged by injuries, and then you go back to this past week's game, Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt, George Kittle gets hurt. So now you're in the mindset of, you look at your roster and say, who's an older, declining player who's maybe getting diminished in terms of skills, and that's where Quan Alexander fits in. And if there's another player that can move, somebody like Tevin Coleman is another guy that kind of fits into that category of an older player with diminished skills. So they're coming off of the Super Bowl. They have a lot of momentum in the program. They can look at this season and say, hey, we were decimated by injuries. We just lost our quarterback. We lost maybe our best player in George Kittle. And if we could recoup a pick or two in the future like they just did for Alexander, that's what makes sense given the state of the 49ers.
Mike, the issue is there's not a lot of players right now that they can trade that there's reciprocal interest in. I think the 49ers have had inquiries and would be willing to deal wide receiver Dante Pettis, but is some team going to step up and actually offer a draft pick? So far, no. What other tradable commodities do they have out there right now? Tevin Coleman got re-injured Sunday. Can't trade him. So again, I think it's a question of who do they have that other teams would want, that they'd be willing to give up, that's not a part of the future, and there just aren't a lot of parts. It's very easy to say, yes, the 49ers should be sellers. Yes, it's going to be hard for them to duplicate the success they had last season when they won the NFC Championship and advanced to the Super Bowl. The fact of the matter is, what's going to work? Who is in play? There are not a lot of options, and so I'm not expecting anything from the 49ers before the trade deadline at 4 o'clock today. But listen, you just don't know what happens in the final hour.
You know, Lewis, for a team that at its best looks like one of the better teams in the NFC earlier on this season, how much of a line is John Lynch straddling between wanting to keep an eye towards the future and also not sending the wrong message to the guys in the locker room that still have to grind it out for 8 more games?
Yeah, it's tough, Phil. There's no question about that, because there are people right now who you're still paying, who still have to compete for 8 more weeks, and you need to keep them motivated. But, I mean, this is the nature of the beast when you're talking about professional football. Sometimes, again, when it comes to availability, it can really just wreck the best laid plans. And I think that's what's happening to San Francisco. And sometimes you just have to take a realistic approach about it. Count on the fact that you still have the right kind of character in your locker room, the right kind of competitive character, where you know that the coaching staff, along with the players who remain, are going to go out and put their best foot forward. But you can't fix all these problems at the trade deadline. The trade deadline is not a magical pill that can all of a sudden change the fortunes for a football team that right now has too many things that have gone wrong for you to fix right now. What's going on with San Francisco is an off-season fix. And it's not of anyone's doing. This isn't because somehow John Lynch didn't do his job. It's just because that's the way football is. And they'll have to fix all this stuff come January.
It's really been a game of attrition for the 49ers this season on the injury front. Along those lines, 5 of their top 7 players in terms of cap percentage this season may not see the field again in 2020. Nearly 30% of their cap space right now features players on the injured reserve list, and that's not counting Jimmy Garoppolo or George Kittle, who could be heading there soon. If you include those two, the number would jump to 44%. We talk about injuries. This right here is an injury list. We're just getting started on this trade deadline.